Sekeres Price for Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're hosting an event in downtown Vancouver, the Wall Center has 55,000 square feet of striking indoor-outdoor space. To learn more, contact the Wall, sales at wallcenter.com. Matt Sekeres with Blake Price. Grady Sass hitting switches and conducting things. Big show coming up for you today. And we will start, Blake, with our poll question because this could be a monumental day for Canadian sports. Asking you, the biggest Canadian sports upset of all time. Bianca Andreescu over Serena Williams to cap the 2019 U.S. Open run, a Grand Slam singles title for the then 19-year-old Canadian. Mike Weir over Tiger Woods at the President's Cup Royal Montreal 2007. Tiger just about at the height of his powers then. You can vote for today over Argentina, or you can vote other, and if you are voting other, please specify in reply. We'll start with you, buddy. Where have you cast your vote on this?
I think I was probably more. Well, it was like this. There was high stakes. Like Weir's win over Tiger didn't secure the President's Cup.
No, they lost handily,
and so I'm going to strike that one.
Mm-hmm.
Bianca over Serena was absolutely a huge win in the final of the U.S. Open.
Serena was battling through injury. You may remember she had hurt herself at the Canadian Open a couple weeks beforehand. So it was Serena with 23 Grand Slam titles, but not necessarily at the peak of her career and not necessarily in peak condition.
But the parallels here are unbelievable. Serena, a little bit dinged, but still game. Argentina, a little bit dinged,
well, Messi,
but still game. Bianca, up-and-coming youngster with a few notable results under her belt. Canada, notable young group with a few notable results under their belt. Maybe not quite as even acclaimed as Bianca was by the time Bianca got to the U.S. Open. So there are comparisons there. Soccer's obviously a little bit of a bigger industry than tennis, but I think that's the best comparison, and Bianca's done it, so I'll go Bianca over Serena Williams.
Yeah, I voted other. I voted other because I think it's Daniel Nestor, then 19 years old and ranked 238th in the world. Like, we didn't even know, outside of Tennis Canada hardcores, nobody knew who Daniel Nestor was. At the time, he was the second best Canadian men's single after Grant Connell. But really, I mean, he goes on to be, of course, a great doubles player, but he had very little experience as a singles player when he slayed number one Stefan Edberg of Sweden here at the Agrodome in 1992 in Davis Cup play. But I love the exercise of this question, because you can go on and on. The Summit Series, when Canada was down 1-3-1, I mean, they needed to win 3 games in a row, right? And do so in Russia. The 1983 World University Games, Canada basketball, our friends Howard Kelsey, Jay Triano, and others.
Dubbed the miracle on hardwood, not too long after the miracle on ice.
They beat Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and a Team USA roster. Anytime you beat Team USA at a best-on-best or a close to best-on-best basketball. Heck, the Raptors over Golden State a few years ago in the NBA championship, albeit, again, the Warriors besieged by injuries in that series. Kevin Durant goes down.
There's some other deep dives. Our buddy Dan Murphy fed us back the Dunhill Cup victory of Canada over the U.S.
Yep. Dave Barr, Ray Stewart, Rick Gibson over Freddie Couples, Tom Kite, and Curtis Strange at the time.
I think about some nice runs that didn't even culminate. Like, I thought Steve Nash in Sydney with his Canadian team getting to the quarterfinals, winning the group, was pretty fun. And you might quibble with me here because they were probably ahead of where the men are now. They were definitely ahead of where the men are now. They were probably ahead of where Bianca was. but the Canadian women winning Olympic soccer gold even.
Yeah.
Like that was a Cinderella run.
Building to that, of course, they had,
Yeah.
they had, 2 bronze medals, right?
That's right.
Heading to it. And the greatest player of all time in women's football, and Christine Sinclair. But yes, it was a hell of a run. Not
Men's Davis Cup win.
Davis Cup a few years ago, although again, you sort of saw that one coming. There was a build there. There was, good players, and both singles and doubles, right? With Vashik on the double side, Felix Dennis. No one's going to argue with Jason Beck, the curator of the BC Sports Hall of Fame. He's got Percy Williams winning the gold in the 100 and the 200 at the 28 Olympics. Vancouver's Doug Hepburn winning the 53 World Heavyweight Weightlifting Championship, becoming the world's strongest man. And Vic Emery and the Canadian bobsled team in the 64 Olympics. I think you'd also argue there's a number of Grey Cup games that I think would apply here, and many of them this century. The Red Blacks beating that Calgary Stampeders team in 2016 in Toronto in dramatic fashion in overtime. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers getting upset in 2001 to Wally Buono, Marcus Crandall, and a really sort of run-of-the-mill Calgary team by Wally's high standards. I mean, the 01 Bombers and the 2016 Stampeders, they're in the top 5 CFL teams I've ever seen, with that Baltimore Stallions team that won in the Flutie Argos, and they went down in those Grey Cup games. And, of course, if you delve deep enough into NHL history with the Canadian clubs, you can find some upsets there. Maybe as recently as 21, the Montreal Canadiens down 3-1 of the Leafs in the bubble and coming all the way back. The 82 Canucks run, of course. Both Calgary and Edmonton have had Cinderella runs to the Stanley Cup final, although in their cases unsuccessful. So, no, it's a fun exercise, but look, as we talked about, and it's our top story today, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. There's 2 things about this match, well, 3, I guess, that I think would add to the legend, add to the lore, if Canada can pull the shocker. Number 1, it's the semifinal of a major tournament, but really a South American major tournament that North American teams got invited to, and yet Canada's the last North American team standing over Mexico and the United States. Number 2 is the stage. I mean, it's New York City, right? Make it there, you make it anywhere. And of course, many believe the best player in the history of the world's game is on the opposite side in Lionel Messi.
See, I tend, as we evaluate sort of the biggest upsets, for me, it's something visceral where you just didn't expect to be there. A team that makes it to the Grey Cup qualified for the playoffs. It wasn't such an underdog story to begin with. Canada's not supposed to be there, both by geography. It's not supposed to be there, and by quality, they're not supposed to. And it's also, Matt, and we're starting to live this down. But it's soccer. We're not supposed to be good at soccer,
right?
And here we are. So I think that's also part of the charm of this team right now and this run. And we were able to be good at women's soccer because, of course, due to sexism, the women's game was so late to start that by that point we were a progressive country that was able to throw money at women's soccer to some degree. So we were able to get on the ground floor, if you will, of really the rise of women's soccer. We had long missed that boat for men's. So the fact that we are catching up in any small degree now is a lot of fun.
For sure. And I imagine there will be an enormous television number for this game. It is perfectly timed, late afternoon Pacific time, middle of the evening Eastern time. So and of course, the absolute marquee star power of Lionel Messi. And hey, wouldn't it be sweet for the 51,000 season or ticket holders at BC Place in May? Canada got the better of Messi, who stood them up that day at BC Place.
All those ticket holders are undoubtedly cheering on Canada in this one, and it is going. I've seen the scenes already. The lunchtime scenes at Times Square.
Yes,
in preparation for this you would think Times Square was in Buenos Aires. It was Times Square, New York, not Times Square, Buenos Aires, and they were indistinguishable.
Yeah, that's right. There are sprinkles. There's like red and white sprinkles on a cake that's blue and white throughout Times Square and the metropolitan area. Tell us about our friends at Yellow Dog, Blake.
Well, lots to discuss because it is summertime, and that's beer drinking season, Matt, don't you know? And on July the 11th, that's in 2 days' time, Neighborhood will be releasing the Be Cool Lemon and Ginger Berliner Style Weisse. They've remixed a classic Berliner style Weisse with tangy lemon and zesty ginger to create a tart yet refreshing brew. I can't wait to test this one. The throwback beer coming out of the Neighborhood Vault, but just be cool about it. The Be Cool Lemon and Ginger Berliner Style Weisse out in 2 days' time.
And of course, Berlin's going to host a big soccer match later this week as well, as Europe comes to a close. And this is just incredible that you've got the Spain-France match, and then, later today, Canada-Argentina, then tomorrow we've got England, then Uruguay in the second Copa semi. So the Soccer Fans Cup runneth over here. It should be great fun. Remind you, Blake, it was 12 years ago. We were in studio together, still, I think, less than a year into our partnership. And we were watching Canada try to qualify for the World Cup down in Honduras. 8-1. 8-1 Honduras. I was about ready to throw in the towel there on soccer. You know what?
Yeah.
We've tried. We're never going to get there. There was a period of time when the Voyageurs, Canada's soccer faithful, were protesting outside stadiums that the team played as opposed to actually entering the stadium and cheering their team on. So it has been quite an evolution here over the last decade plus. I like what, and look, the hiring of Jesse Marsch looks smart. Quote, I felt how strongly they wanted me here, and I'm at a point in my life where I don't need all the other bullshit, he said. Of course, the Americans ruining not picking Jesse Marsch, a 50-year-old American, to guide their team.
I remember watching the Canadian team from 95 to 2015. And I remember, being okay on the surface with them. They would just park the bus, hope for a counter goal that was miraculous in order to win or draw a game. And I remember, thinking, okay, just batten down the hatches, try to survive, and then try to send a ball over the top that Pescasolido or Di Rosario jumps onto and scores a miracle goal. But there was a part of even the young me that thought, this doesn't feel like living. Like, this doesn't feel like we're actually here on this stage.
No.
This feels like you're in the middle of the ocean with a life preserver that, for the time being, you're alive. But is it really a path to survival? Like, it's not really, as opposed to right now, where this Canadian team goes out and tries to score goals against the top teams in the world. And I don't think I would have been convinced that we would ever get to this point. And we're still coming out of this tournament. Canada will be ranked, 35th in the world. Great. But we're not a top 10 team. We probably will never be a top 10 team. But the fact that we are in the conversation is hella fun. It's just great to be a part of
it. First of all, you missed Alex Bunbury.
Yeah. Yes.
And secondly, are you allowed to just say Pescasolido?
Paul Pescasolido.
Vic Router and the amazing call.
Dominic Mobilio.
Just amazing. That was the best part about Canadian soccer back then, was
Vic
Router pronouncing or screaming the multisyllabic names of the occasional goals that went in for Canada. Okay, let's move on to hockey here. I woke up this morning and I thought, Blake and Grady must have a tear in their coffee. Their favorite puck-moving defenseman is off the market, Adam Bokas, and he signs for cheap, $800,000 with the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. The rich get richer, the smart get smarter, and your favorite puck-moving defenseman is now off the market, fellas.
And Matt,
these.
It's a two-way deal too?
No, it's a one-way deal. It's a one-way.
Is it a one-way deal? Okay.
1-year, one-way contract for $800K. Jeff Vayette, I liked his tweet. Looking forward to him plugging into the OEL or Montour role for pennies on the dollar and hearing how it's the tax man winning them games, not their constant willingness to buy low on interesting players. And we had talked over the last couple of weeks that a right shot defenseman who's got an absolute bomb and was a one-time top 10 pick. This was an interesting reclamation project. I saw Jay Fresh Hockey had a pretty good review on him on the player card side. This was an interesting reclamation project, particularly if you were looking for a puck transporting defenseman. Now he does turn the puck over. There's no doubt about that, but he also creates some chances on the other end. And you're looking at this Canucks defense core going, outside of the top two guys, is anyone else there going to be able to routinely create chances? Because of course, big Nikita Zadorov would create some chances from time to time. But is there anybody in that bottom four or bottom six, if you want to go down to the two subs, that has any kind of ability to create chances for the Canucks forwards and help the rush, which of course Rick Tocchet is hoping to improve upon this year?
Credit to Lord Humongous on Twitter who did the math on this. By the way, his season high for games played is 52 in 5 seasons in the National Hockey League.
Hasn't been most durable.
So his scoring rate,
coach's decisions too. Right?
You're right. Yes, not all injuries.
That's not all injury.
But his scoring rate for 82 games in his 5 NHL seasons is 26 points, 37, 35, 43, and then 23 points in a tough year last year. I mean, if you gave that resume, if that was on the back of his hockey card, Matt, he's getting more than $776,000 this year.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So to me, that's just a no-brainer signing. If you've got room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that price point, I would have loved to have seen. Yeah. Because again, it's 1.2 million or 1.25 million or less. You can bury the entirety in the minors. Not a single dollar counts against your cap. Of course, with a player like this, you got to get him through waivers to bury him in the minors. But
if you've gotten to that point, you don't mind losing him. So
right, exactly. Anyways,
a 37% WAR guy for 776. Oh,
love the fit there. As Vayette says, the Florida Panthers here coming off a Stanley Cup where, and this is routine now. You win the Stanley Cup. Some of your players are going to get paid. Brandon Montour got paid by Seattle. Oliver Ekman-Larsson got paid by Toronto. So now you're looking to backfill on defense. Where are you going? I think a really smart ad there.
Not to mention, Matt, they sent a 57-goal guy for 8.6.
Well, West Vancouver, Sam Reinhart did them a hell of a solid there.
Yeah.
Of course, 8.6 stretches a little further in Florida than it does in other jurisdictions. They're more heavily taxed. What were you telling me about the Panthers center ice line? What are they doing there now?
Oh, yeah, this is fun, and I love the contention by one of the accounts, at least that I saw. This should just be NHL. This shouldn't be a Florida Panther thing. This should just be what is not mandatory. I don't think you're going to have to force anybody to do this. The center ice line now down in Sunrise, Florida, has silhouettes of the Stanley Cup through the red line from boards to boards. And as the Stanley Cup champion, you get the right to lay that down. Have that as a tradition,
Absolutely. It demarks, it denotes the reigning Stanley Cup champion for all who are watching in arena, on television, and the players on the ice.
They've only put it in thetheir practice facility now, but I sure as hell hope they put it in their real ice. And you're right. It's just a way of reminding you, the banner's up, but you're not craning your neck up a lot.
Looking up,
No.
At least not when the play is on.
And the television crowd doesn't get the banner view much, so this is a great way to do it.
Do you think the NHL will allow that, or is this the no fun hockey league, Blake?
Yeah, that's too much gloating, you guys. We know you won the Stanley Cup.
Or hockey culture will step in. That's the other thing. No. Can't brag, can't rub it in our faces, can't spike it at our feet. New season, haven't won anything yet.
Yes.
Told the guys, forget about last year. It's a new year.
The more you say those cliches out loud, there's no chance it's on their real ice in September. There's no chance.
None.
Oh, God.
I wanted to ask you, because, of course, last year the Canucks did some work deep into free agency with Pius Suter, and then, of course, went about a multitude of trades in and around training camp, preseason, and early in the year. When you look at the free agent leftovers, and Grady Sass, proud Dutchman, he's got a big one tomorrow against England. Dutch Gretzky, Daniel Sprong, 18 goals in 76 games last year. He's still out there. 43 points. AFP had him at a 3-year at $4.1 million deal. He's 27. He continues to be one of these underappreciated players. Or he's bounced so much around the league. Tyler Johnson scored 17 goals in 67 games last year with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now he's 33.
I'm less crazy about that one.
Okay. And then Blake Tocchet likes his forecheckers. Cal Clutterbuck, my dude. 36 years old, played all 82 last year, and you could probably get him at less than $1 million, according to AFP.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm a little bit curious on Sprong. God, never mind the recent full seasons. He had partial seasons back in the COVID year, 13 goals in 42 games, and 18-19, he had 14 goals in 47 games. I mean, those are nearing 30-goal rates in those abbreviated seasons. Yeah, what are we missing here? And yeah. I'll be honest. There's more than a handful of players in the NHL that have got complete blind spots on. Daniel Sprong is one of them. Like, I know nothing of the player, but those stats look pretty decent. I'll be honest. If you're looking for a depth scorer, I don't know what that price is going to come in at for Daniel Sprong, but I'd be willing to kick the tires.
It's not going to be 3 years at $4.1 million as the AFP projection was. I don't think so at this stage of the game. Now, when you look at your puck-moving defenseman left, we talked about Victorious Tysonberry, Tony DeAngelo, if you're willing to go there, although he's coming off a poor year. Shillington, of course, in Calgary, albeit you're not sure how much Shillington's going to play going forward. It's Justin Schultz. We've talked about him, British Columbian, coming out of Seattle, and I have zero appetite for John Klingberg. You might. The ex-Leaf and Star, who is all offense, no defense.
Trade PTO Klingberg. I'd PTO him.
Sure. PTO's costing nothing.
And but you see how the resurfaced hips look.
He's also trying out for the rest of the league when you PTO him. So anybody PTOs him, basically, if you've got a good intel. You can evaluate there. I know we've seen trades, and in fact, a lot of goaltender trades, right? Allmark, Markstrom, Kemper. It's been a number of goaltender trades. And we've seen some trades for skaters as well, going back to Sergachev, Jeannot at the draft, what Tampa did. Even the Edmonton trade that we talked about with Buffalo, Savoy, and McLeod, and some others. But Marner's still out there. Natchez is still out there. Ehlers is still out there. Zegras is still out there. And what do these guys have in common, Blake? Like, those are all really skilled, some more than others, wingers. I know Zegras has played a little bit in the middle, but I think he's an NHL winger going forward. We could still have some fireworks and some pretty big trades here before the summer is out. In fact, there's part of me that's wondering whether the clock is ticking on Natchez a little bit because he's filed for arbitration. And you know that Carolina runs their ship a certain way. And are they going to be happy just to let the arbitrator decide here, or are they going to move the player on before it gets to that? And things have gone awfully quiet in Toronto with Marner. I'd like your 2 cents on the scoring wingers that are still out there on the.
Yeah, Natchez can play down the middle too, by the way. But yeah, I think that in the case of almost all these players except for Zegras, these are these are really nice players. And while I think each of the teams has acknowledged that, and I'm saying Sekeres isn't in that mix because he's yet to prove himself at the level that a lot of the other guys have, I think. But he still could be a nice player. I think you're as the GM of that player right now thinking, I know this player's worth something, and I just can't throw him away. Like I've seen some crazy things said about a trade about Marner. In fact, I think one of the Toronto shows was throwing around a Marner for Neches straight up.
Yeah,
And
I mean
that's crazy. That's crazy though. That's a 100-point player for a 50-point player. You don't do that.
Well, the idea there is that you're going to re-sign Neches long term. So you're going to have more club control over the player than Mitch Marner, who is going into the final year of his contract at 10.9. So,
and there's cap savings too, I guess you'd get in there as well.
Yes,
I don't think that just isn't coming in at 10.9.
No, you're getting $2 to $3 million in cap savings, maybe even $4 million. And you're getting the player long term as opposed to simply.
But if you're Treliving, you're intrinsically a 100-point caliber winger should be worth a lot.
Yeah, and like he's a pretty decent defensive player too, Marner.
Yeah.
The thing that I think he's got to fight against now is he a playoff player? Like, is that the sort of profile and style of player you win with in the playoffs? Or if you have one of those players, do you have to surround him with certain things from a roster construction point of view that gets you the best out of him? Like, I just wonder whether people are now looking at him and wondering, is he Jonathan Huberdeau?
Nick Ehlers is in the same boat, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, if you take his opening playoffs out of it, where he had 7 assists in 15 games, but no goals. So even that part is a little bit concerning. Nick Ehlers, since then, has 7 points in 22 playoff games.
Mm-hmm.
So Marner, he's being haunted by that too.
Yeah, Marner's 50 points in 57 playoff games, just the 11 goals. But of course, you look at his player card, and there's he is way more a creator off the wing than he is a finisher, which you can do when you got to shoot for a centerman like Austin Matthews there. It was just the 2 points it was 3 points in 7 games this past year. He was 14 in 11 games, playoff games the year before. He was 8 and 7 the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
But as a young player, he struggled a little more in the play. Anyways, keep those names in mind because I think you have motivated sellers there across the board, with perhaps the exception of Pat Verbeek in Anaheim with Zegras, because I think you can hang on to that player a little longer. Whereas, the Leafs are trying to win next year. So you're either got to commit to Marner and you see where that goes, or you're making your trade, I think, before the season to make sure whomever you're bringing in has a training camp and your all systems go out of the chute. Neches, we talked about, there's an arbitration clock ticking there. And in the case of Ehlers, Winnipeg, we talked about him last week, struck out in free agency with some guys they were hunting.
Let me ask you this. What's Mitch Marner's next contract going to factor in at AAV-wise? Is there a world in which he has to take a pay cut?
Well, he just put up an 85-point season, but he missed a number of games.
I don't know that people are going to be willing to pay.
I mean, he's 639 points in 576 games. So you almost have to evaluate him as he's an 85 to 90 point player either way. And Blake, he'll be 28 in free agency. Like, that's a young UFA.
But he's going to spend $11 million on a very good winger.
We'll see where the cap goes between now and then. We'll see what the free agent prop looks like. We've talked about that. We've looked forward to next year's free agent class. Buchnevich is now off the board. We'll see if Rantanen gets there. But it's entirely conceivable that he will be the best winger, if not the best player, available next year in free agency, if he gets there.
What was the most expensive contract signed in free agency this year? Gensel?
I'll have that in a minute. I believe it would be Gensel. Give me a second.
That was still under the $10 million range. So, Gensel's a playoff performer who comes with a ton of pedigree in that regard. Gensel at $9 million on the nose. You're telling me the top guy in this class gets 9, the top guy next year is going to get 11?
Probably not. No, you're probably right there. So we're looking at total value of the deal is what you would want to look at?
Well, no, right? I meant AAV. And if Gensel gets 9, what does that mean for Marner? And to me, Marner's going down to $10 million next year on his contract.
So if you're going AAV, it's Gensel.
Yeah.
The one thing I have to look at is because Reinhart got the extra year, right?
And you know what, Matt? In some ways, it makes sense that you get paid for what you're about to do. That's what you should be getting paid for. And these have been the prime years of Mitch Marner's career. Make no bones about it. He's still got great years left in him. But to me, it kind of makes sense that in the readjusted before in the NHL world, it always was linear. Your contracts for star players just got bigger as you got older.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to see this now, where that middle contract that you sign for the 23 to 28-year-old years for the superstars. Again, this isn't going to work for the middling guys, but for the superstars, those are the best years of the superstars. Maybe that's where they're going to make their money.
So Reinhart got more total value because he did get the 8th year. So it was Gensel in AAV getting $9 million per year, which works up to $63 million total. Reinhart, because he was a domestic free agent of the Florida Panthers, winds up getting $69 million in total value.
So that'll be my prediction for next year, that he bests both of them. Marner does, but he takes a pay cut on the whole.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's probably fair. That's probably fair. And Blake, I'm not even sure he gets there if he gets traded, because if you're trading for Mitch Marner, it's probably going to cost you something significant. And in order to validate the price of acquisition, I think you're going to have to get him signed in. And maybe that could be what's holding this up a little bit, is you want to get the player re-signed in short order and know he's going to be there for a while. Unless like Utah and the new owner just goes, you know what? We've got so many picks. We got so many prospects. Let's just peel one on a flyer, bring Mitch Marner in, see if we can make the playoffs, go on a run, make him feel like he loves it here, and then try and re-sign him at some point later in the season or in the off season. But, barring a move like that, I think you are acquiring Mitch Marner with an extension in place, or you know exactly what it's going to take, sort of thing. You get the player re-signed and not sit
taking
there
on that cap hit. I'm not acquiring that cap hit without the
massive cap hit, of course. No. Fun article from the Daily Hive. Ex-Canucks who are still on the UFA market, and I'm going to give you 3 names.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me if they get NHL contracts, NHL jobs for next year.
Okay.
Tanner Pearson.
Whew.
13 points in 54 games with the Habs last year.
Oh boy, really?
31.
PTO, no contract.
Okay. Travis Dermott, 7 points in 50 games last season. But of course, a guy who can play the right side defensively. He was with Arizona last year.
I'll say he does. He gets a minimum deal.
Okay. Sam Gagner, 10 points in 28 games, of course, with the Edmonton Oilers. And as we know about Sam, by the way, Sam, I want to feel old. He'll be 35 next month.
He retires.
When he's Dave Gagner. Remember Dave Gagner's kid was coming up?
Yep.
Now he's 35 years old, Blake. He's 35.
Yeah. A lot of indicators of my age. He retires. I bet you he retires.
He retires.
Yeah. He was left as a scratch.
Play the middle, and he, of course, is as a depth power play guy. So I just wonder.
But you want to win the cup, and he was on a cup.
He's the right
he was on a winnable cup team with the Oilers, and he wasn't getting a look. So when you know that, like, your whole dream is, I want a chance to win the cup again, and part of that dream is I want to be a part of it.
Dream, like, but the bottom line is, can I make more NHL cheddar? Like,
sure,
I have one more year of making close to $1 million, eking out a hockey career. I think that's as motivating as anything.
He's made a lot. I bet you he retires.
Yeah. Okay. So there's more. I think Daily Hive did 7 names, but
did Mott didn't get signed, did he? I don't think so.
Is Mott still out there?
Detroit, I think so.
Oh, really? I missed that. Okay, there you go. Easy nose.
Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta Bar. Greta, great spot to catch the game throughout the season. Quick walk to the rink or stadium. Go-to spot for food, drink, fun before, after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, West Cordova, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. We're talking to Jeff or Ben here first?
Let's do Ben.
Okay, Ben Steiner, Vancouver's Ben Steiner of the Northern Futbol podcast and of MLS.com. He was one of the few Canadian journalists in the stadium in Atlanta a couple weeks ago for the first round of Canada-Argentina. He's in the stadium this afternoon as well. MetLife on the Jersey side of New York City for Canada-Argentina round 2 in the Copa semifinal. We'll talk to JPAT as well. Get JPAT in on the biggest Canadian sports update or upset debate, as well as talk Canucks with Jeff, what's out there. And also looking at this Canadian Four Nations roster team versus the U.S. team. There's a story brewing here, Blake, and it's not a story I'm particularly comfortable with going forward. And that is, could it be possible that Canada goes into an international tournament as something other than the favorite in men's ice hockey? We'll talk to JPAT about that.
I would say, here's the thing. The B team of Canada would throttle the B team of the United States, but that's not how that goes.
Word.
No.
Let's get to Bet365 bets of the day. The segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres Price. So I was scouring the prop menu of Argentina, Canada. South American footballers, and Argentine specifically, divers and whiners, right? And if you believe in the nefarious arts, that Copa tournament officials, it's a South American tournament, right? They want Messi to win. That the Chilean officials on the pitch today are in awe of his legend, or also just want South America to win this tournament. Then are the chances not decent that Argentina gets a penalty today, right? A chance from the spot. Argentina is plus 400 to score a penalty. And I'm going there against my heart, but going with the head here.
That's, I was going to go Whitecaps, but seeing as you're going Argentina, I feel like we should both go Argentina, Canada today.
Are you plus 850 last I saw, Blake? Are you going there?
No, I'm going goal scorer. I'm going goal scorer because I want to be able to cheer on a goal. And I thought my bet yesterday was pretty good that both teams get on the board. That was a pretty good one. But we've talked about these goal scorers. One day they're going to get on the board and score a goal that is their signature goal, maybe, as a Canadian footballer. Jonathan David is going to do it tonight. It's an anytime plus 650 on the anytime goal score for Jonathan David.
Let me ask you something, because we as the World Cup went forward, remember we had that first game against Belgium. We felt like we were the better team, but we didn't get the result because, well, was Belgium number 1 in the world too? Is this the second straight international tournament we're playing number 1?
They were close to it. They were 1 or 4. Those
right,
two
exactly.
numbers stand
At one point there, Belgium was first in the world.
Yeah.
And then our expectations, then we play Croatia and we didn't F them, believe it or not.
Yeah.
John Herdman. and we got down to really sort of, moral victory sort of expectations and celebrations around the team.
Well, remember, in the final game, Atiba Hutchinson off the crossbar, that would have tied the game late, and they got a draw.
Against Morocco.
Yeah.
No, they lost.
They lost, but if that ball off the
Okay.
crossbar goes in, it's a 2-2 draw.
Right. I almost don't want to follow my timeline today, particularly if Argentina gets up early.
I know.
Because I think we need to move beyond the moral victories, and the apologies and the accommodations. It's time to play big boy football. It's time to have expectations. It's time to feel confident about chances and all of that. At least that's what I would like to see sort of seep into the team and seep into the Canadian public consciousness as we discuss.
I'm not dismayed until it's a 3-goal margin. If it's 2-0 after 55 minutes, you get a goal in the next 15 minutes and we get ourselves a fun finish. So I'm not upset. I'm not dismayed. I'm not walking away from the TV. I'm not ever going to walk away from the TV, but I'm not going to be going. I'm not going to, take a long walk until it's a 3-goal deficit.
Yeah. I hope tomorrow we're talking about goals and not chances, Blake. That's all I'm saying.
For sure.
I will suffer no chances talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ben Steiner from New York on the big match today, coming up next.
Hockey season may be over, but it's always a great time at Greta.
Air hockey season is never over.
Right.
And at Greta, it's the best air hockey table around, but all the best games. So never mind waiting for somebody else to stage something in Vancouver for you this summer. You can stage your own thing. The fun is always there at Greta.
A quick walk to the rink or stadium. It's a go-to spot before the game, after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. Our next guest, Vancouver's Ben Steiner. He's the host and producer of Northern Futbol podcast here on the Nation Network as well, working for MLS, and he is in New York City, or I guess East Rutherford, New Jersey, to cover Canada, Argentina this afternoon. And what many are calling the program's biggest game in history. Ben, do you concur?
Yeah, I put that out on Twitter earlier, and a lot of people saying the 2000 Gold Cup could rival that. I think this is bigger just because you look at how, Canada's rallied around this team. Of course, I wasn't born for the 2000 Gold Cup, but I don't imagine it was quite the same. I think, making a game like this in the age of social media, in the age of where Twitter's at, and so unifying, maybe it would be better if it wasn't Elon Musk's Twitter, but it's exceptional to see Canada, getting around this, seeing smoke in the streets of Montreal, celebrating a Canadian soccer win against Venezuela. I wrote about it for MLS that we've seen these scenes before, but they've been for Olympic hockey. We've never seen it for the national team soccer, especially on the men's side.
I don't know why you chose violence with the whole birth date thing, but the fact that the Canadians have a chance to stir that emotion with Canadians, we've been talking about upsets all day long. You never expect the upset. That's the whole thing. And no one expects a win or a result. And the straight to PKs element is a little bit interesting here as well. Do you really expect Vancouver, the Canadian team to vie for a result here? It's great that they got here. Can they vie for a result?
I think that's what makes tonight special, is Canada's not just here to play the game. We saw that in the first game in Atlanta, and I had the pleasure of being there as well. And I think they shocked a lot of people. There were probably 100 Argentine journalists in the press box, and it was myself, Alex Gongi-Ruzic, Josh Cloak from The Athletic, and not many more in the press box in Atlanta. So we were heavily outnumbered, and we were the only ones that weren't surprised that Canada could put a game to Argentina. I think that's what we've learned about this national team at this point, especially under Jesse Marsch, is that they can, go up against the world's best. Maybe they can't beat the world's best, but, they did well in one half against the Netherlands. They tied France 0-0, and Mbappe played that game. And then, of course, it didn't go exactly to plan against Argentina, but 2-0 is respectable. There's, 100 teams in the world that would take a 2-0 against Argentina. So are they the favorites? No. Will everything have to go correctly? Of course. And even if it goes correctly, Jesse Marsch said it as well. Even if it's 100% perfect game, it's Might not be enough. That's how good Argentina is. But does Canada have a chance? Absolutely. If there's any team that could upset Argentina, it's Canada, I think.
Was that Argentina's B game in the opener, Ben, against Canada? Or was that something less than their B game in the opener against Canada?
I don't even think it was their B game, to be honest. You look at the players they played. That was a great selection of their players. That was Messi at as 100% as Messi can be at his age, a couple days before his birthday, of course. But when you look at the team now, Messi's ailing a little bit. He took a boot to the thigh, and he's not 100%, and he'll play. There's no way he's going to sit out. I mean, he'll play on crutches, right? To give the Vancouver show, but he's not 100% right now. And I think that, does play into Canada's favor a little bit. The weather's not going to be ideal. It's exceptionally hot here in New York and New Jersey. There's a potential storm coming in as well. And I think if it gets a little bit scrappy, then Canada's got a guy like Richard Larea that can turn up the temperature even more. So Canada's got a shot. But when you look at Argentina's game, they grow through tournaments. Yeah. And Canada hasn't shown that they can grow through a tournament before, right? So,
yeah. Tactically, Ben, I mean, of course, the old trope with underdog soccer teams is park the bus and see if you can win in penalties. Of course, the Argentine keeper is an expert in penalties, so I'm not sure that's the best tactic. And also, and I've heard Paul Dolan talk about this. If you're really pointing forward towards your home World Cup and the way you want to play in that home World Cup, then do you not use this tournament a little bit as a test lab? And that means actually try and press and get the first goal, even if that may open something up on the backside defensively for you. What's your take on how they should address this game tactically?
I think you look under how Jesse Marsch has played so far, and this has not been a team that wants to sit back. They haven't sat back against the top opponents, but they've still looked good defensively because they've been aware. And you look at the center backs of Derek Cornelius and Moise Bombito, and then, Alfonso Davies at left back as well. You've got incredible pace and athleticism within those players that you can afford to press a little bit higher, give a little bit more space. In that first game against Argentina, of course, we saw Lionel Messi get breakaway opportunities. We saw Enzo Fernandez get opportunities that you don't want to be giving up because, 9 out of 10 times or even more, Messi's finishing a chance like that. Crepo's been exceptional, and his play at that level has allowed Canada to take some liberties in how they didn't necessarily drop back because they have trust in that he can make the save. So I think you can look at that, and you look at this Canadian team that they don't need to sit back. If they're going to win, they're going to have to score goals. They showed they can create chances. They've struggled to score goals. If they can finish tonight, I think they win the game because they do create enough chances to win a game against Argentina. But it's just about the finishing. I think defensively, they'll be fine. They'll give up 1 or 2, but I think they develop enough chances to score 2 or 3. And it's just about finishing. I don't know if Kyle Larin's the guy to finish them. I'd love to see another look. We saw a good look from Tani Oluwaseyi. I do think it'll be Kyle Larin and Jonathan David to start. If they're on fire, then, Canada can win this game pretty easily.
They're not scrubs that are getting these chances. That's the thing. And we know this from hockey analytics, and expected goals in soccer works the same way, that you keep banging on that door. Eventually you're going to score. Wouldn't it be something if it eventually came through here versus Argentina in the semi? I am worried about that back line. You talked about those two, the 4 weakest moments in the tournament have been the chances surrendered to Argentina, 1v none, 1v1, and the goal that they surrendered to Venezuela, where they again, go 1v1 versus Moise Bombito, and the lob ball goes in behind Crepeau, playing so high. It's one thing to do that against Venezuela. That is freaking Argentina over there. Do you think Jesse Marsch tells Moise Bombito and Derek Cornelius, after being burned as much as they have been in this tournament, okay, let's hang back 10 yards further than we have been so far?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a different defensive structure from Canada. It's not going to be sit back in a low block, drop into 5 at the back, and just anchor 3 guys at the back. We're not going to see that tonight, as many teams would against Argentina. We're going to see a little bit less of a high line than we've seen throughout this tournament so far. And I think that's smart in the way that you're planning for Argentina, especially the way Lautaro Martinez has been able to get in behind a lot of back lines throughout this tournament. Of course, he scored in every game in the group stage, and Argentina didn't look fantastic in their quarterfinal against Ecuador, but they still found a way through. You don't want to get the penalties with Argentina. That's the big thing, because I think that's, to be honest, an automatic loss. Yes, Canada showed a lot of class and guile in that penalty shootout against Venezuela, but it's a different beast in facing Argentina and Emi Martinez in that, right? So you don't want to get to penalties, and I think you have to do whatever you can to avoid that potential.
What do you think of this reputation Canada's had of being the bully? Peru started this. Somebody published a table of the fouls throughout the tournament, fouls and yellow cards and red cards. Peru's got almost double what Canada has in the tournament. I think they were at 55, and they're calling us the bullies. Wow. We actually have the same amount of fouls as Argentina in the tournament. Scaloni's saying the same thing. Oh, they're a very physical team. You have 38 fouls. Canada's got 38 fouls. But is it good to have that in their head that, oh, they're so physical, or are they laying the groundwork with the officials to, oh, watch those guys? They're just bullies, those Canadians.
But Blake, only one of these countries plays hockey. That's why we have the reputation.
It's so weird though. Like they're no more physical than Chile or Peru was.
Yeah, I don't get it. I find it hilarious that they've taken on this kind of moniker. And all the questions yesterday to Lionel Scaloni was, Canada's a physical team. How are you going to deal with that? I'm like, are they though? They're not really physical. Sure, they get a decent amount of yellow cards because they seem to get those a little bit more often on the amount of fouls that they get.
Common ball officials, yeah.
And tonight, I don't know whether he'll have them tonight, but the referee tonight has personally branded cards that have a little like logo on them. So he's used them in the past.
Of themselves? Of their own visage?
Yeah, he's got a little, him holding a card on the card. So I don't know if we'll see that tonight. He's done it before, but it's an all Chilean refereeing crew and one that could be a little bit interesting.
Oh, yeah, I don't love the fact that it's Chileans, South Americans, and an egomaniac running this game. Ben, what Blake and I have whined a little bit about how Atlanta, Kansas City, Dallas, Fort Worth, we haven't exactly had accessible stadiums for Canadians thus far through this tournament. New York City, I mean, you hopped on a flight from Toronto this morning and we're there. You can drive it from Montreal in like 6 hours. What do you anticipate of the crowd tonight at MetLife?
85,000 fans in that stadium. It's the biggest stadium I've ever been to. I'd imagine we're going to see 80,000 in blue and white, maybe 5,000 in red and white, and that's a good chunk. But the tickets are very pricey. The plan was that Argentina would be in this game from the start, right? So those tickets have been the Messi prices that we saw in Vancouver, and he didn't play. And so you're going to see a lot of people who've cashed out a lot of money to come to this game. There's going to be a decent amount of Canadians, but from the looks of the Voyageurs Facebook group, where they distribute a lot of the tickets, having a big block of Canadians, as you would see at a World Cup or even in a group stage game, that would be a little bit more accessible. I don't know if we're going to see that. We will see red and white here and there, but I don't know whether you're going to see sort of that strong core of Canadians where you can stand in that one group and feel like you're in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, or wherever. There will be Canadians there in greater numbers than we saw in the other games, but I don't think it's going to be all that noticeable, to be honest. I'm happy to be very surprised, but knowing Argentina and what I've seen from them, it's going to be mostly blue and white.
Yeah. Lastly, young Ben, since you've already reminded Blake of how young you are and don't remember the Gold Cup, which incidentally, Canada advanced to the quarterfinals because they won a coin flip with South Korea. All right. So there's a little luster taken off the achievement when you win a tiebreaker coin flip to make it to the knockout stage. What would be the biggest upset in Canadian sports that you remember in your young life?
Putting me on the spot here. Oh,
Would it be tonight? If they were to beat Argentina, would you say that's tonight? You were around for Bianca over Serena.
That's
you
where
were around
that's
for
where my mind
Raptors
went.
over Golden State.
That's where my mind went, was both Raptors and Bianca, and any of the tennis success Canada's had. Davis Cup and Billie Jean Cup as well. But I think this outdoes them all. I mean, we're talking about the best soccer team in the world, and Canada's not that, nowhere near. If Canada can pull this off in what is Argentina's tournament, what is probably Messi's last Copa América, I don't think there's a bigger way you can go about it. The only bigger win in Canadian soccer history would be the Tokyo 2020 gold medal game that the women won gold in. And the men have never come close to a stage like that. This is as close as they've come. That it would be. I'm speechless even talking about the possibility of Canada pulling it off, because it would be that monumental, and I think you'd see it in the streets. And you'd see the smoke in the streets. You'd see the songs. It would feel like the Canucks playoff ended.
Well, if it happens, you got to find you a Canadian bar in New York City that's open late, buddy, because I think there'll be some red and white on the streets of Manhattan as well if this were to come to pass. Ben, great stuff. Have a good trip there. We'll look for your coverage, and we'll be listening to Northern Futbol here on the Nation Network. Thanks, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Guest is brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, off to an incredible start for the 2024 season. Both course conditions and the service at the golf club, reminding group organizers of 12 or more here, it is not too early to book your September or October corporate or buddy trips. The prime times are filling up fast. And of course, you, the group organizer, if you got 12 or more, you play for free. Tell us about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups as we bring in Jeff Paterson, Rinkwide's Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter. You watching the soccer today, Jeff?
I'll be there. Absolutely. Appointment viewing now. And I've been there throughout the tournament. Soccer at an arm's length for me, but anything at or near the highest level in sports, it attracts me in a hurry. And so, what a day with the Euro semis and then into Copa as well.
Yeah.
So, yes, a big day of soccer.
So before we get into the Vancouver Canucks here, then answer me the poll question, Jeff. The biggest Canadian sports upset of all time. Bianca over Serena to win the U.S. Open in 2019. Mike Weir beating Tiger at the President's Cup in Montreal 2007. Today over Argentina, if you're calling the upset, or feel free to go off the board here.
Yeah, I'd lean towards Bianca only because at the pro level of golf, I think on any given day, those guys are also good. You can catch a guy on a bad day. Not that Mike Weir caught Tiger on a bad day, but Mike Weir was a top 5 guy in the world at one point. Obviously, the Masters. I just think head-to-head, one round, a guy can get it going, red hot putter, whatever the case. So, yes, on paper, Mike Weir taking down Tiger looks like a massive David versus Goliath. But I think over the course of 2 weeks of a Grand Slam event, and I know we're talking about the final, and it culminates obviously with the final, but you got to get to the final first. And so for Bianca, she got on a roll and carried it through. So I would say at this point, individually, yeah, probably Bianca taking down Serena to win the U.S. Open, a great accomplishment, but this certainly stands. And I know that this isn't a final, but hey, we can ask the same question if they get through, set it up for, what's still to come. But yeah, I mean, come on. Canada, the last North American team standing in this tournament. Like, there's just so many arms and legs to this story. Let's go. Let's serve it up and see what happens.
In New York City against the greatest player of all time. So a delicious backdrop and stage here.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. We're never the underdogs in hockey. We went through a mock-up of the U.S. team for this Four Nations Cup. Now, we don't care about the Four Nations Cup, but it is a preview of the Olympics to come. Is there a world in which Canada will not be, I don't know about betting favorite. Let's take that word betting favorite out of it, but just your gut favorite. Are they going to be the gut favorite going into the next Olympic tournament?
Well, without knowing who's in goal for Canada And ultimately, looking at the depth that the U.S. has, like, can we not somehow forge a passport or make a trade or something?
Exactly.
Like, Connor Hellebuck's the guy, right, for Team USA. Thatcher Demko is going to give him a pretty good run. Jake Ottinger, I think, is in the conversation. Jeremy Swayman is knocking on the door saying, hey, I'm available for rent for a short-form tournament. It's just an embarrassment of riches right now in goal for Team USA. And ultimately, the contenders, when we're talking about Canada, Jordan Binnington and Stuart Skinner, I'm not sure that I can throw my full support behind Team Canada with Stuart Skinner. And I know he got them to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, but he's Stuart Skinner. Now let's see where he is next year and beyond, and maybe he continues to grow into that role. But short form, particularly a short form tournament, goaltending can absolutely be the difference maker. So, skater for skater, position by position, I still think, and I've seen mock-ups of the various lineups, and Team USA can roll out a hell of a lineup. There's no question. But I think Canada, if we're talking about 20 skaters, I think we can scrounge up 20 awfully good skaters as well. So I'll be fascinated to see betting lines and those types of things, because I do think the goaltending ultimately can be a huge difference maker, and they've got it, and right now we don't.
The top 3 skaters, the top 3 forwards for Canada are better than but Matt and I went through the depth of the 6 defensemen and the fourth line, like what the fourth line of the U.S. looks like. It's better. It's better than Canada. Like, it just is. But I mean, again, the spectacular helps. Crosby, McKinnon, McDavid can sometimes overcome all of that, but it's, my goodness, they are deep.
And to Jeff's point, Jeremy Swayman is from Alaska. Can't we just adopt him?
Yeah.
Can we find some
ancient treaty?
On
a
the
loner. He's a loner for 2 weeks. We just take him on a loner. That's,
Seems reasonable to me.
Jeff, yesterday we were talking about our favorite Canucks free agent signing outside of Jake DeBrusk. The other 4 guys, which one is your favorite and why?
So, as I sit here now in early July, probably Danton Heinen. Just I like his speed. I like his versatility. I like the fact that he's been linked to the Canucks on so many occasions that he finally was able to make it happen and come back home. And we'll see how it's, we know that the homegrown thing doesn't always work out, but I think that there is a decent player there. And I like the fact that all these guys have come from the Boston system where they've been well coached. And I think that they're going to step into a structured system here, and it's going to translate. There's going to be some differences, obviously. There are across the National Hockey League, but I think Danton Heinen is a guy who's had to scratch and claw for every contract that he gets. And even though he's put up some decent numbers in years gone by, he hasn't really been able to get the security that he got. And not that 2 years is a ton of security, but I think that he can lay down some roots back home here and feel like he's going to be a Canuck for the next couple of seasons at the very least. And yet it's not the long-term contract that maybe he falls into that trap of being too comfortable. So look, if we think that Jake DeBrusk is, I don't think Jake DeBrusk is a straight swap for Ilya Mikheyev, even though he may end up stepping into Ilya Mikheyev's spot. I think Dan Heinen is more in that sort of role. And after what we saw out of Mikheyev over the second half of the season and into the playoffs, certainly hope that Danton Heinen can give the Canucks everything that they got from Ilya Mikheyev down the stretch and into the postseason.
The depth of this team overall, do you feel like it has been addressed? Is that, like, people will debate whether or not this team is better than it was at the start of last year, at the end of last year, what have you. But is it unequivocal that at least the depth on the forward lines is better?
I think so, certainly on paper. Now, we have to remember that at the end of the playoffs, that was a roster that included Elias Lindholm, who had a really nice playoff run. Didn't have a great regular season, but he wasn't brought in for the regular season. He was brought in to bolster the ranks for the playoffs, and he did that. And so a right shot center, valuable commodity, they take a bit of a hit there. But I'm encouraged by Jake DeBrusk. I want to see how this works out, and I trust that it is going to work out. I don't think he's going to have 7 30-goal seasons as a member of the Canucks. There'll be some dips along the way. But I think the potential is there for him to be a 30-plus goal scorer. And at $5.5 million, I think that's a reasonable freight. So when I look at the depth, obviously a guy like Nils Höglander, 24 goals last year on this absolute heated shooting percentage. I'm not anticipating that that's a jumping on point for Höglander and now we expect him to be a 25 goal guy for the next couple of seasons. I think that like Kuzmenko, I think just the numbers suggest that there could and probably will be some regression there. Is Brock Besser a 40 goal scorer now because he got there once? That seems like a bit of an ask for me, but I also think he now knows what it feels like and looks like to be a 40 goal guy. And so the baseline for me starting the season for Brock Besser is 30. I think there's no reason that playing with JT Miller, showing that he was able to have success in the power play, I certainly I don't want to see a world in which Brock Besser takes a step back below 30 goals after getting to 40 this time around. So I think that Besser and Höglander maybe a step back, but we also know that there's so much more for Elias Pettersson to give compared to the way that he finished his season. And then you plug in DeBrusk and you get Heinen. And I answered the poll question as Heinen, but I'm high on Kiefer Sherwood as well. Like I really was drawn to him in the playoffs. Like he was just an absolute thorn in the side every shift, didn't waste a shift in the playoffs. And I sort of look at this comparison where Sam Lafferty got to the point that he was a healthy scratch in the playoffs. Kiefer Sherwood should be able to give you everything you got out of Sam Lafferty and more. And I think have a little bit more of that sandpaper, that edge. You know, the Lafferty looked the part and just left you wanting on so many nights. And I think Kiefer Sherwood has come to a point now at 29 where he understands what got him to this level and what's going to keep him at this level. And I think he's going to be a Rick Tocchet favorite. I think Rick Tocchet is really going to like having a player like Kiefer Sherwood in his lineup.
And Jeff, Alvin talked about him as potentially a second power play unit guy in the bumper spot because of his good shot. Power play wise, in terms of personnel and all the pieces fitting together here after free agency, have you sketched it out? Do you think they're in good standing there?
Honestly, I leave that till August. That sounds like an August project for me, Matt. I really haven't given it a whole lot of thought. I would assume that DeBrusk gets the first opportunity on power play one, a left shot guy. I know that he hasn't played the bumper a ton, but really when you think since Bo left, Kuzmenko was the first guy through. Garland got some looks. Lindholm, all righties. They really haven't found a goal scorer as a left shot guy, and were reluctant to try Höglander or Dakota Joshua. Got to the point that Nikita Zadorov was a net front presence there when they were pulling the goaltender late in games. Well, he's not here, so he's no longer an option. But I would assume that DeBrusk is going to get a look on power play one, and then we're sort of back where they were as a team last year, where it's going to be a collection on power play two and kind of throwing some stuff against the wall, I think, and hoping it sticks. I would assume that Philip Hronek would be the defenseman out there, and then you're Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua, I have to imagine, is going to take on more of a role. That's something that I would like to see, is plant him in front of the net. We know that he's certainly got the size and he's got the hands there. Why wouldn't you? To the point that if DeBrusk doesn't work on power play one or goes cold at some point, can Dakota Joshua continue to grow his game where maybe he gets a look with the big boys with the man advantage? So beyond that, is it Garland, Höglander, Joshua, and Heinen as your forwards on the second power play unit? Hronek, again, perfect world. Your power play, the first unit goes out, does the damage, scores, and you don't ever have to worry about power play two. And we sort of saw that early on last season where power play two was just a collection of guys and never really got on any sort of role. You'd love to have a little bit of balance, but I do think that's going to be a work in progress.
We've talked about the Canucks maybe getting a puck-moving defenseman between now and opening night. Truth of the matter is, there's only so much negotiation you need to have with a $1 million puck-moving defenseman. Adam Boqvist signs with Florida. He was out there. That's where he signs. Barry's out there. I mean, what kind of negotiation? Yeah, like all these guys. Like, I know, I look at the calendar and I realize, okay, it is only July 9th. But again, I also look at the, what does the negotiation look like with those guys? It's pretty quick. It's a yes or a no. What do you think? Does this tell you that they have other plans to address that? Whether it means a trade or maybe they just wait until the series or the season has begun to address this issue?
Yeah, look, I was willing to live in a world where they took a flyer on a guy like Boqvist and to see him get a two-way deal, that basically a throwaway. There's no downside there for Florida. So I'm surprised that it took as long as it did for him to get that contract, but he's off the board for now. My sense is, and I don't know this, but my hunch is that they are going to sort of step away other than Artur Silovs, and there's no real hurry there unless they sense that somebody's going to pounce and try to poach. Even then, there's enough wriggle room that I think they would match any sort of offer sheet. And we know that we talk about offer sheets all day, and rarely do they happen. So I'm not too worried about an offer sheet for Archer Silovs, but really beyond that, there isn't a whole lot left on their to-do list here in the summer months. And my hunch is that they're going to be patient and play it out and see what the market bears. And again, you get closer to training camp where some teams are going to have to shed some salary and maybe a player shakes free. When you set your rosters ahead of opening night, usually there's a player or two of interest that is available on waivers. And I think that's the sort of level of player that we're looking at for the Vancouver Canucks. And then beyond that, if they want to start the season with the defensemen that they've got, and they do have 8 guys, including Noah Juleson and Mark Friedman, it's not like they can't ice an NHL lineup. The Vinny Desharnais thing is interesting to me, and certainly the way that they talk him up, that they think there's a whole lot more there. We'll see. But look, Adam Foote and Rick Tocchet in this system brought out the best in Tyler Myers, and to the eye, Vincent Desharnais is a lot. He's certainly not as experienced as Tyler Myers. We know that. And they love the fact that he's only played 114 games in the National Hockey League. Like, they think that he is this a ball of clay that they're going to be able to mold and see what they can squeeze out of him. So, I won't be shocked if they arrive at training camp with the assembled cast that they've got on defense, and then take it from there if they feel that they need to make some moves or some upgrades.
What about at wing, Jeff? And I ask that because Martin H.S. is one of 14 guys who has filed for arbitration. So the clock is ticking there. No one has yet met Carolina's price. Maybe that price comes down. Do you think they should? Do you think they will take a run at H.S. on the trade market?
I don't. I just can't figure out how the Canucks would consummate a deal like that. I just don't think they've got the trade capital. And then beyond that, you get the player. He wants a significant raise, and he's going to get one. And so to me, it's sort of a double whammy of the acquisition cost with the chips that the Canucks have to play, and being out at prospects camp last week, it's driven home that there really isn't an awful lot in the cabinet. They can try to put a spin on it, and hopefully some of these guys, and obviously the ones that were just drafted, it's way too soon to render any sort of verdict, and I'll give them every opportunity. But just in terms of having players that you're ready to part with, they spent draft capital on Zadorov, obviously threw in a bunch to get Lindholm out of Calgary. Those guys have walked, so those deals are done, and they have nothing to show for them. Negus is a nice player, there's no question. But it's going to come at a cost, and then he's going to want big money over long term. And I don't think that they're in a position to go down that road. So my sense there is that that's a non-starter for the Vancouver Canucks. But hey, Patrick Allvin loves to operate in the cone of silence. And would I be blown away if the Canucks somehow pulled off that kind of deal? I'd be awfully surprised, but never say never with this management group.
Lastly, Jeff, from me, just because I saw his name on the list of remaining free agents, and we know he can forecheck. How does 36-year-old Cal Clutterbuck sound, huh? Wow. As a guy who's hard on the forecheck and demolishing everything in sight with his physicality.
I think they're okay with Cal Clutterbuck. Jeff?
Yeah, that's not a name that I think they need to add to the collection at this point. And it'd be interesting to see where ultimately he falls if he finds a hockey home at that stage of his career. We do know that he has racked up hits, maybe more than actually he's doled out over the years. But hey, who's to quibble, right? Accounting is different in all those rinks. But the hit total sometimes seemed artificially high with that player.
Played all 82, though, last year. One of the few remaining free agents who did play all 82.
Maybe a PTO. Maybe.
Yeah.
Does that mean... I just thought the Islanders were keeping their entire team together. I thought
that's what Lou does now. Yeah. This team isn't good enough, but we're going to keep it intact, and we're going to hope for better next year.
How's that working for him?
Yeah.
I think I think that whole project now is about how he gets his son the job. Great stuff, Jeff. We'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.